You've been playing by rules designed to keep you small, explaining yourself, chasing validation, shrinking your presence. That's why people overlook you, why doors stay closed, why life feels like resistance. But the moment you change how you move, how you speak, how you carry yourself, everything shifts. People lean in, opportunities unfold. Respect becomes effortless. When you master this invisible game, the world stops pushing against you and starts bending for you. In a few moments, I will teach you how to move, speak, and exist in a way that makes the world submit. The hard truth is simple: you become what you tolerate. Every time you let something slide, disrespect, mediocrity, laziness, broken promises, you send a message not just to the world, but to yourself. You're telling your subconscious, this is acceptable, this is okay. And the brutal reality? What you accept multiplies. It doesn't matter how ambitious you are, how talented you are, or how badly you say you want success. If your standards are low, your life will reflect it. Every single time. Look around. People are drowning in situations they secretly hate, living lives far beneath what they're capable of, not because they lack potential, but because they've normalized settling. They've learned to tolerate average jobs, average relationships, average health, average results. They whisper to themselves that it's fine, while dying a slow, invisible death inside. But the truth? Life doesn't give you what you desire. It gives you what you demand, what you refuse to tolerate. The world respects the person who draws the line, who says, I do not accept this. When you refuse to entertain disrespect, people stop offering it. When you refuse laziness from yourself, discipline becomes your new identity. When you refuse chaos, disorder, and drama, your environment transforms to match your internal command. Life listens, people listen, but only when you're serious enough to stop negotiating with nonsense. Understand this: standards are not suggestions, they are rules, boundaries, laws of how you allow life to interact with you. If you tolerate being overlooked, you will be. If you tolerate disrespect, it will become your norm. But the moment you raise the bar, the universe recalibrates. People either step up to meet you or they step out of your life. Both outcomes are a win. The most powerful people in the world aren't superhuman. They've just mastered one thing most never do: the ruthless enforcement of their standards. It's not arrogance, it's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's deciding, this is who I am, this is what I allow. Everything else doesn't exist in my world. That mindset changes everything. If you want excellence, demand it. From yourself first, raise your standards on how you think, how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you show up. Stop entertaining weakness disguised as comfort. Stop allowing fear to masquerade as logic. When you elevate what you demand from yourself, the world has no choice but to respond in kind. This isn't about perfection, it's about precision, about deciding what is non-negotiable. Your peace, non-negotiable. Your goals, non-negotiable. Your self-respect, untouchable. Anything that compromises these becomes invisible to you, irrelevant. The world bends for those who refuse to bend for nonsense. When you show life that you're not someone who entertains mediocrity, laziness, or disrespect, life stops offering it. The weak tolerate, the strong eliminate. Raise your standards and watch as everything and everyone around you either rises or disappears. Because you do not get what you wish for, you get what you insist on. The art of strategic absence. There's an undeniable power in being seen, but what most never understand is that there's often even greater power in not being seen. Presence can create desire, but so can absence, and in ways that presence never could. The truth is, the more accessible you are, the more ordinary you become in the eyes of others. Familiarity breeds comfort, but comfort eventually breeds indifference. People start to take for granted what's always available. They stop valuing what they assume will always be there. And if you allow yourself to be constantly accessible, constantly explainable, constantly present, you slowly start to shrink in the perception of others without even realizing it. The strongest individuals in any arena, whether it's business, relationships, leadership, or influence, understand the subtle, ruthless power of pulling back, of not always showing up, of letting their absence speak louder than their presence ever could. When you are always available, when you are always responding, showing up, showing out, you become part of the background noise. But when you withdraw, when you step back strategically, you trigger something primal in people: curiosity, uncertainty, intrigue. Suddenly, your absence becomes louder than any words you could ever speak. This isn't about playing games, it's about understanding, leverage. The more someone sees you, the more their mind adjusts to your presence. You become predictable, routine, expected, and with predictability comes a decline in perceived value. But the moment you become scarce, whether that means fewer appearances, fewer words, fewer explanations, people start to lean in. They wonder why. They wonder where. They start filling in the blanks with their imagination. And imagination, my friend, is always more powerful than reality. Look at the most respected leaders, the most admired icons. They are not omnipresent. They are selective, deliberate, intentional. They understand that value increases with scarcity. Diamonds are valuable because they are rare. Water is essential but abundant, and so no one worships it. This is the same psychology that applies to your presence in the world. The less accessible you are, the more magnetic you become. The mistake most people make is thinking that being constantly available will keep them relevant. It won't. It only makes you easy to ignore. People respect what they can't easily reach. They respect what feels elevated, rare, slightly beyond their grasp. So when you step back, you don't lose relevance, you amplify it. Your silence becomes a statement. Your distance becomes a reminder of your value. Mastering the art of strategic absence doesn't mean disappearing forever. It means choosing your moments. It means understanding that not every room deserves your presence, not every conversation deserves your input, and not every person deserves unlimited access to your energy. When you pull back, you give people a chance to feel the weight of your absence. And when you return with impact, with presence, with power. Because the truth is simple. The most respected people are never the most available. They are the most intentional. The ones who make the world notice their presence precisely because they've mastered the power of their absence. Master the energy you project. Long before you speak, before a single word leaves your lips, the world has already made a decision about you. Your presence speaks first. The energy you carry announces who you are. It walks into the room before you do, lingers after you leave, and influences how people treat you without them even realizing why. Most never realize this. They focus on what to say, how to craft the perfect sentences, but they ignore the most powerful form of communication, the invisible signal they broadcast every second they exist. Energy is real. It's not abstract. It's felt. The confident don't have to declare that they're confident. You feel it in how they move, how they look at you, how they stand. The insecure don't have to admit they doubt themselves. You sense it in their fidgeting, their restless speech, their constant need for reassurance. The world is a mirror. It reflects back the energy you radiate, whether you realize it or not. If you walk through life with uncertainty, life responds with resistance. If you move with power, with certainty, with the quiet understanding that you belong, the world adjusts to accommodate that. The truth is, everyone is broadcasting something. Some project neediness, some project desperation. Others project arrogance, insecurity, chaos, or fear. But those who command attention, who shift the atmosphere simply by entering a space, have mastered the subtle art of controlling what they emit. It's not about faking it. It's about aligning your internal state so powerfully that your external world has no choice but to reflect it. When you operate from a place of certainty, certainty in who you are, certainty in your value, certainty in your direction, people feel it. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You become someone that others naturally look to, follow, and respect. Your energy does the work for you. But if your energy is scattered, if your thoughts are filled with self-doubt, if your internal dialogue is polluted with anxiety and second-guessing, that too becomes your signal. The world reads it loud and clear. Mastering the energy you project starts within. It starts with the conversations you have with yourself when no one's watching. You either reinforce the identity of someone who leads, someone who commands, someone who owns their space, or you reinforce the identity of someone who shrinks, doubts, and reacts. The mirror never lies. You cannot fake what you fundamentally do not believe. Your posture, your stillness, your pace, the way you take up space, all of it tells the world a story. The question is, are you consciously writing that story, or are you letting fear write it for you? Because when you take control of your energy, when you embody composure, certainty, and power, the world responds in ways that seem almost unfair. Doors open, people listen, opportunities gravitate, not because you forced it, but because you mastered the signal you send. The most powerful people rarely say the most. They don't need to. Their presence has already said everything. Own the room without saying a word. There's a language more powerful than anything you could ever say. It's the language of presence. The way you enter a room, the way your body carries itself, the way your eyes meet the world, All of it speaks before your voice ever has the chance. People think power is about how loud you are, how clever your words are, how well you speak. But real power doesn't need noise. It doesn't need explanations. Real power is silent. It lives in the invisible signals you broadcast every time you step into a space. Walk into any room and watch how people respond. Without consciously realizing it, they scan you, your posture, your eye contact, your stillness, your micro expressions. All of it sends a signal. Are you someone who leads or someone who follows? Are you someone to be respected or someone who can be dismissed? This judgment happens within seconds. The room decides before you even open your mouth. The weak slouch, shrink, look away. Their bodies betray their own uncertainty. Their eyes dart nervously, signaling submission before a word is exchanged. And the world responds in kind. But those who understand the art of nonverbal dominance, those who own their space with quiet certainty, shift the entire dynamic the moment they arrive. Their posture is upright but relaxed, signaling confidence without tension. Their gaze is steady, neither aggressive nor avoidant, but commanding. They hold eye contact not as a challenge, but as a statement. I am here. I am grounded. I am unshaken. Micro-expressions reveal more than most realize. A slight smirk, a raised brow, a composed neutrality, they speak volumes. They tell the room you are comfortable with yourself, that you are in control of your own energy. The one who moves with intention, who doesn't fidget, who isn't desperate to fill silences, instantly commands more respect than the one who scrambles for words or approval. People aren't responding to your words nearly as much as you think. They are responding to what your body declares about how you see yourself. Carry yourself like you belong, like you have nothing to prove, and the room believes it. Carry yourself like you're waiting for permission, and the room will deny you it. Owning the room without saying a word isn't arrogance, it's self-certainty. It's mastering the subtle cues that most never think twice about. It's the pause before you speak. It's the way you stand when no one's looking. It's the steady, deliberate pace of your movements. It's knowing that presence alone can be louder than anything your mouth could ever produce. When you master this, conversations change. Interactions shift. People treat you differently, not because of anything you've said, but because of everything you've silently shown. This is the quiet dominance that few understand, but everyone feels. The silent authority that needs no announcement, no justification. You walk in and the room feels it, because presence, true presence, is the loudest language there is. The art of unapologetic confidence. Confidence is not a performance. It is not loud. It is not about pretending to be someone you're not. Real confidence is quiet, unapologetic, and undeniable. It doesn't ask for permission to exist. It doesn't shrink itself to make others comfortable. It doesn't carry the burden of constantly explaining or justifying its presence. And yet, most people move through life as if they need the world's permission to take up space. They apologize for their voice, their ambition, their presence, sometimes without even realizing it. They do it in how they lower their gaze, how they soften their tone, how they minimize their own existence in every conversation, in every room they step into. But here's the truth that most never hear. When you move like you don't belong, the world agrees. The energy you project becomes the script that others read. If you walk into a room hoping to be accepted, hoping to be validated, you've already placed yourself beneath everyone there. You've entered the space from a place of lack. You've told the world, I am waiting for your approval before I decide how to feel about myself. And the world responds accordingly. It overlooks you. It forgets you because you showed up like someone waiting to be chosen. Unapologetic confidence begins when you finally decide that you are done negotiating with yourself about whether or not you are enough. It's the moment you stop seeking external validation to justify your own existence. It's when you step into a room not with arrogance, not with a chip on your shoulder, but with the quiet inner knowing that you belong. Not because anyone told you, not because someone gave you permission, but because you decided it was true. This is not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the most grounded, the person who doesn't flinch, the person who doesn't rush their words, doesn't fidget, doesn't fill every silence with nervous noise, the person who understands that their value is not up for debate, the presence that says, I'm not here to prove, I'm here because I deserve to be. Apologizing for your existence whether through words, body language, or energy, is the fastest way to become invisible. People don't remember those who shrink themselves. They don't respect those who act like intruders in their own life. But they never forget the one who steps in like they've always belonged, who commands space by simply being fully, unapologetically themselves. When you adopt this mindset, everything shifts. The energy changes when you walk in. People notice. They may not even understand why, but they feel it. Something about you doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't ask. It simply is. Because you've stopped waiting for the world to confirm your worth. You already know. You decided. And that decision, the unwavering belief that you are enough, exactly as you are, is what makes the world move around you, not the other way around. This is the art of unapologetic confidence. You don't ask. You don't explain. You simply exist like you belong, because you do. Become comfortable with making people uncomfortable. Most people spend their entire lives twisting themselves into shapes that make others comfortable. They soften their words, dilute their presence, and shrink their energy just to avoid the tension that arises when others feel unsettled by who they are. But what no one tells you is that the moment you stop catering to the comfort of others, the world starts shifting in your favor. Because power isn't handed to those who seek approval. Power belongs to those who are unapologetically themselves, even when it makes the room uncomfortable. When you walk into a room fully owning your presence, fully embodying your worth, without apology, something happens. Some people lean in with respect, others pull back with discomfort. But that discomfort is not your burden. It never was. Their discomfort comes from being confronted with something they can't easily categorize. Someone who doesn't play by the unspoken rules of shrinking, pleasing, or begging to be accepted. And whether they realize it or not, they respect it. Because deep down, even those unsettled by your presence recognize the truth. The one who does not need approval holds the highest leverage. The need to make everyone comfortable is a prison. It forces you to betray yourself in small, invisible ways. You start saying yes when you mean no. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You nod in agreement just to avoid friction. And with every small surrender, you chip away at your own power. But the moment you decide that you are no longer responsible for managing the emotional reactions of others, everything changes. You free yourself. You reclaim the space that was always yours to begin with. Powerful people do not fidget for approval. They do not over-explain. They do not backpedal because someone raised an eyebrow or shifted in their seat. Instead, they let silence do the heavy lifting. They let tension sit in the air without scrambling to dissolve it. Because they understand that discomfort is not a problem, it's a signal that boundaries are being set, a signal that respect is being demanded without a word, a signal that the old dynamics of people-pleasing are dead. If you walk through life constantly trying to keep others comfortable, you will forever live beneath your potential. You will spend your energy smoothing out imaginary wrinkles that were never your responsibility. But when you stop caring whether your confidence intimidates someone, whether your standards inconvenience them, whether your presence forces them to confront their own insecurities, you step into a different level of existence. One where the world adjusts to you, not the other way around. There's a strange irony in it. The more you try to make people comfortable, the less they respect you. But the moment you lean fully into who you are, unmoved by how it lands, unbothered by whether it's palatable, you become magnetic. Not because you forced anyone to like you, but because you showed them you didn't need them to. This is how the world bends. It doesn't bend for the agreeable, it bends for the unapologetic. The game of silence, leverage the void. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools of power. In a world addicted to noise, chatter, and constant validation, silence becomes a weapon. The person who can sit comfortably in silence holds the advantage. While others rush to fill the void with nervous explanations, justifications, or rambling thoughts, the one who masters silence sits in control, calm, collected, and quietly dominant. Most people don't realize this. They believe that influence comes from what they say, how quickly they respond, how eloquently they defend their position. But the truth is, the person who speaks least often commands the most attention. Silence unsettles people because it forces them to face their own discomfort. It creates space for insecurity to breathe, for doubts to creep in, for overthinking to take hold. When you stop talking, others start talking more, sometimes revealing far more than they ever intended. They second-guess themselves. They question what you're thinking. They begin negotiating with themselves in real time. And as that internal pressure builds, you remain still, unaffected, in full control of the dynamic. In negotiations, in arguments, in tense conversations, those who cannot hold silence lose. They fold under the weight of their own need to fill the air. But the one who embraces the void, who leans back, who allows the silence to stretch, forces everyone else into a state of vulnerability. It's in that silence that people panic. They assume your quiet means disapproval, judgment, or calculation. They scramble to clarify themselves, to correct their tone, to sweeten the deal, to offer more than they initially intended. The silence does the heavy lifting for you. The power of silence isn't just about saying less. It's about knowing when not to speak. In moments of conflict, the instinct for most is to defend themselves immediately, to react, to explain. But when you remain silent, you flip the script. The other person is left to battle their own thoughts. Did they go too far? Did they offend you? Are you angered or simply unimpressed? They don't know. And that uncertainty becomes leverage. Silence also communicates something most words can't: complete self-assurance. It says, without saying, that you do not feel the need to convince, to chase, or to earn approval. It's an unspoken message that your worth is already decided by you, not by them. And that level of certainty is magnetic. It makes people lean in, pay attention, and tread carefully. Because when someone isn't scrambling to fill the silence, it signals that they hold the upper hand. There is an art to letting silence stretch. An intentional pause that feels like forever to everyone else, but feels like control to you. You hold it until the other person breaks first, until they offer more information, until they sweeten the offer, until they reveal their hand. The void becomes a mirror, forcing them to confront themselves while you sit comfortably, untouched. Silence isn't emptiness. It's pressure. It's power. It's the invisible force that shifts the dynamic in your favor, without you ever having to say a single word. Stop explaining. Stop justifying. There comes a point when you realize that the constant need to explain yourself, to justify your choices, your boundaries, your existence, is a subtle form of weakness. It's disguised as being reasonable, polite, or considerate, but underneath it lives something far less noble: a need for approval, a quiet, creeping insecurity that whispers, if they understand me, maybe they'll accept me. But here's the harsh reality: the more you explain, the more you dilute your power. The more you justify, the more permission you give others to question your worth. Strong people don't explain themselves. They don't plead for understanding. They don't soften their edges to make others feel more comfortable with who they are. They operate from a place where validation is internal, not external. Their presence carries its own explanation. Their results are the loudest thing in the room. The way they move, the way they hold themselves, the way they execute. They don't need to say anything because everything about them already communicates the message. I am not here for your approval. I am here because I chose to be. When you over-explain, you unconsciously lower your status. You hand power to the other person by signaling that their understanding of your decision is necessary for it to be valid. It's not. Whether someone agrees with your standards, your boundaries, or your path is irrelevant. Their approval is not the currency that determines your worth. Yet most people move through life like it is. They water down their truth, add endless footnotes to their decisions, and wrap their boundaries in 100 justifications, all to avoid that uncomfortable moment when someone simply disagrees. But here's the shift that changes everything. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself, not for walking away from chaos, not for raising your standards, not for saying no, not for doing what aligns with your own growth. Powerful people understand that clarity is enough, a decision is enough, a boundary is enough. There is no courtroom, there is no jury, your life is not up for debate. Watch how dynamics shift when you stop explaining. The conversation ends faster, the respect grows quieter, but deeper. People quickly realize that the usual back and forth, where they expect to question, debate, or negotiate your boundaries, isn't available with you. You've closed the door on that dynamic, and in that silence, in that refusal to elaborate, a different kind of power emerges, one that cannot be faked, one that cannot be stolen. Let your results speak. Let the way you move through life explain everything anyone ever needs to know. Let your presence communicate what your words no longer have to. The moment you stop explaining and justifying, the moment you decide that your own validation is the only one that counts, you become untouchable. Not because you shouted it to the world, but because you finally realize you never needed to say anything at all. Walk away power, the ultimate leverage, Nothing in this world commands more respect than the quiet, unspoken ability to walk away. It is the ultimate leverage, the invisible weapon that shifts every dynamic, every negotiation, every interaction in your favor. Most people don't understand this. They believe power comes from how much they can hold on to, how much they can convince, persuade, or endure, but real power isn't found in attachment. It's found in detachment, the unwavering willingness to let go of anything that disrespects your worth, violates your standards, or no longer serves your vision. When you can't walk away, you're trapped. It doesn't matter how confident you act, how clever your words are, or how strong your presence seems. If deep down you know you need the job, the relationship, the opportunity, or the validation, you've already handed over your power. The other side can feel it. They can smell it. People can sense when you're tethered to fear, when you're negotiating from a place of lack, when you're silently praying that things work out because you believe you have no other options. But when you carry the energy of someone who can calmly, confidently, unapologetically walk away, without fuss, without drama, without a second glance, the game changes. Suddenly, the entire dynamic tilts in your favor. You are no longer chasing, you are choosing. You are no longer begging for acceptance, you are offering opportunity. The leverage is yours because you've shown, without having to say it, that your self-respect is not negotiable. People, whether consciously or not, treat you based on the limits you set. If they sense that you are unwilling to walk, that you will bend, compromise, or tolerate anything just to stay, they will push those boundaries. But when you demonstrate through your actions, not your words, that you are perfectly fine walking away from anything misaligned, they recalibrate fast. It's the brutal truth of human nature. We value what isn't desperate. We respect what doesn't need us. Detachment is not indifference, it's clarity. It's knowing that your peace, your standards, and your mission are not up for debate. You can love deeply, you can commit fully, you can care immensely, but none of it means anything if you lack the courage to walk when the situation no longer aligns with who you are. It's not a threat. It's not an ultimatum, it's a quiet, unwavering fact. I don't force, I don't beg, I don't chase, I choose. This mindset terrifies those who depend on control, because suddenly they realize they have none over you. You become the wild card, the one who cannot be manipulated, coerced, or guilt-tripped. You've removed their greatest weapon against you, your own fear of loss. If you cannot walk away, you are owned by whatever it is you fear losing. But the moment you decide, truly decide, that nothing outside yourself holds that power, you become untouchable. The world bends to those who don't fear letting it go, because those who can walk away at any moment are the ones no one ever wants to lose. The certainty principle. Certainty is a force so powerful that it bends reality itself. People walk around believing that truth is objective, that facts and logic dictate the flow of conversations, negotiations, and decisions. But the reality is far more primal than most are willing to admit. The human mind isn't designed to follow truth. It's designed to follow certainty. When someone stands in front of you radiating complete, unwavering belief in themselves, in their words, in their position, it triggers something deep in the subconscious. Whether consciously aware of it or not, people lean toward that certainty. They defer to it. They yield to it. Because certainty in any setting looks like leadership. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It doesn't matter if you have the best credentials, the most qualifications, or the strongest argument. If you deliver any of it with hesitation, with doubt, with uncertainty, the world will doubt you right back. But the one who moves with total conviction, without flinching, without second-guessing, without fidgeting for approval, becomes the gravitational center of any room they step into. People orbit certainty because it offers something their own minds crave. The illusion of safety, the comfort of direction, the feeling that someone knows the way. This is why the loudest voice isn't always the most correct, but it is often the most followed. This is why leaders are rarely the most knowledgeable. They are simply the most certain. The energy of certainty communicates something words never could. I believe, therefore you should too. The world mirrors this energy back without even questioning why. You've seen it happen 1,000 times. Two people deliver the same message. One does it with shaky language, timid body language, and doubt creeping at the edges of every sentence. The other delivers it with poise, composure, and an unshakable tone that leaves no room for debate. The second person could be entirely wrong, but they win the room, not because the facts sided with them, but because the energy did. Certainty is magnetic. It shifts power. It silences opposition. It forces others to recalibrate their own position, wondering whether they missed something, whether their own doubts are valid. People don't like to trust their own uncertainty, so when faced with someone who shows none, they subconsciously surrender to it. The transfer of power is instant, invisible, and unstoppable. The truth is, the world isn't waiting for you to be perfect, it is waiting for you to be certain. The person who doubts themselves invites others to doubt them. The person who stands tall in their own belief, no matter how radical, commands attention, respect, and often compliance. You become the authority when you act like the authority. Certainty is not arrogance, it's not bravado, it's an internal decision. I trust myself, I back myself, I move like what I say is law. Because in the game of power, it isn't truth that wins, it's belief. Those who appear absolutely sure don't just influence reality, they bend it. Emotional mastery. Be the calm in every storm. There is a rare kind of power that doesn't come from wealth, status, or appearance. It doesn't come from how loud you are, how dominant you try to appear, or how aggressively you demand respect. It comes from something far deeper, far quieter, and infinitely more commanding. The ability to remain calm, truly calm, unmoved, unshaken. A presence so stable, so composed, that it shifts the energy of every room it enters. The person who has mastered their emotions holds a level of power that the chaotic, reactive majority can never touch. Most people spend their lives at the mercy of their emotion. They are slaves to triggers, to external circumstances, to the unpredictability of the world around them. A minor inconvenience ruins their day. An insult derails their focus. A setback sends them spiraling into doubt, frustration, and panic. This is the default state for the average mind: reactive, volatile, easily manipulated. And the moment you operate from that state, you surrender control. You give your power away to anyone who knows which buttons to press. But the person who refuses to react, the one who refuses to panic, becomes untouchable because they've stepped out of the game that most people are trapped in. They no longer dance to the chaotic rhythms of other people's moods, insults, or provocations. They operate from a grounded place, an inner stillness that cannot be broken by anything happening outside themselves. And that stillness, that calm in the face of chaos, is what commands real respect. Not through force, not through noise, but through presence. Imagine this: chaos erupts in a meeting. People raise their voices, emotions spike, tension floods the room. Most people either escalate with the chaos or shrink under the pressure. But then there's one person, still, composed, watching. They don't react, they don't rush to speak, they don't flinch. Their calm becomes a mirror, exposing the hysteria of everyone else. Without saying a word, they command the room. Their control over themselves becomes control over the environment. The power dynamic shifts, and everyone feels it, even if they can't articulate why. This is emotional mastery. It isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about refusing to be ruled by them. It's the understanding that emotions are simply signals, not commands. You can acknowledge anger without becoming angry. You can feel stress without letting it control your next move. You can experience discomfort without scrambling to escape it. This kind of mastery doesn't make you less human. It makes you more powerful than the version of yourself who crumbles under every wave of emotion. Never reacting doesn't mean never acting. It means you act from choice, not from chaos. You move when you decide, not when someone provokes you, not when circumstances pressure you, not when fear starts whispering in your ear. You become deliberate, calculated, grounded, and in that, people feel something different. They recognize, consciously or not, that you are someone they cannot easily destabilize, someone whose buttons they cannot press, someone who doesn't bleed emotional energy into every interaction. The person who has mastered their emotions carries an aura that others cannot replicate. While the world panics, they breathe. While others react impulsively, they observe. While people crumble under the weight of their own volatility, they stand firm. And because of that, they win. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. The truth is, emotional mastery is the most valuable discipline you will ever develop, because life will never stop throwing storms your way. People will disappoint you. Situations will blindside you. Challenges will escalate when you least expect them. But none of it matters when you no longer depend on the world being calm in order for you to be calm. You become the calm. You become the constant. You become the presence that others look to when everything else is falling apart. Never react, never panic. Master yourself, and the world has no choice but to respect you. because in a sea of chaos, the calmest presence is always the most powerful. Detach from outcomes, attach to standards. Most people quietly sabotage themselves by obsessing over results. Their self-worth rises and falls with every win, every loss, every outcome. They operate like emotional gamblers, constantly scanning for signs that success is arriving fast enough, wondering if their efforts are paying off. And when the results don't come on their timeline, they collapse mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The brutal truth is that anyone who ties their identity to outcomes is destined to suffer. The outcome is never guaranteed. The finish line is always moving. Life does not reward desperation, it punishes it. Winners play a different game. Their focus is not on whether the goal is achieved today or tomorrow. Their focus is on how they show up, relentlessly, consistently, and with absolute discipline. Their obsession is not with the prize, but with their own standards. Discipline becomes the identity. Excellence becomes non-negotiable. The result becomes irrelevant because the standard is the result. This mindset shifts everything. It removes the emotional turbulence of constantly checking if things are working. Instead, energy is funneled into execution, into process, into mastery. Outcomes are external. They rely on variables outside of your control, other people's decisions, timing, luck, circumstances. Standards are internal. They are the line you draw in the sand and refuse to cross. You get to decide how hard you work. You get to decide how prepared you are. You get to decide the level of discipline, focus, and precision you bring into every moment. That's real power. That's the part no one can take from you. A mind anchored in standards doesn't care if success takes 1 year or 10. The question isn't, will it happen? The only question is, am I someone who shows up at the highest level regardless? And that answer must always be yes. When that becomes the foundation, success becomes inevitable. It has no choice. The world eventually bends to those who refuse to lower their standards. Desperation for results creates shortcuts. It produces rushed decisions, sloppy execution, and emotional chaos. People burn out not because the dream is too big, but because their focus is in the wrong place. They obsess over the outcome instead of mastering the process. The paradox is undeniable. The more obsessed you are with results, the slower they come. But the more detached you are from needing the result, and the more obsessed you become with your own standards, the faster everything accelerates. Winning becomes a habit when the requirement is no longer external success, but internal excellence. The person who falls in love with discipline, who demands precision from themselves day after day, who holds themselves to a level most would never even consider, becomes unstoppable. The scoreboard becomes irrelevant because the real scoreboard is self-respect. And that's something no loss can take and no win can give. You build it within. Outcomes fluctuate. Markets shift. People disappoint. Timing misaligns. But standards never fail you. A person tied to outcomes is fragile. A person tied to standards is invincible. That's the difference between those who hope they might win and those who always win. Not because they chase the reward, but because they chase the highest version of themselves and refuse to stop until the world has no choice but to match them. Master perceived value. People don't respond to who you truly are. They respond to who you tell them you are, subconsciously, energetically, and behaviorally. The world doesn't hand out value fairly. It doesn't measure your worth based on your intentions, your goodness, or even your competence. It measures based on perception, on cues, on signals, on the invisible energy you broadcast without ever opening your mouth. You are constantly teaching people how to treat you, whether you realize it or not. Every movement, every glance, every tone of voice, every decision signals to the world exactly where to place you on the hierarchy of respect. Most people operate completely unaware of this. They walk through life wondering why they're overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. They think it's because others are unfair, cruel, or oblivious. But the truth cuts deeper than that. The world mirrors back exactly what you project. Show up like someone who doubts themselves, and the world hands you doubt in return. Move like someone who feels secondary, and people treat you like an afterthought. But when you shift the way you carry yourself, when your energy, your posture, your presence communicates absolute belief in your own value, the environment has no choice but to respond. Perceived value is an unspoken negotiation happening at all times. In every room, in every interaction, others are scanning you. Whether consciously or not, they are asking, is this someone to follow, someone to admire, someone to respect, or someone to ignore? And they don't make that decision based on your resume, your background, or even your words. They make it based on how you treat yourself, how you move, how you hold space, how unapologetic you are about your own existence. The person who commands high perceived value doesn't wait for validation. They don't fish for compliments or seek reassurance. Their posture speaks. Their stillness speaks. Their ability to sit in silence without fidgeting or scrambling to prove themselves speaks. People feel it, and in that feeling, something powerful happens. Respect, intrigue, gravity. Perceived value is not arrogance. It's not pretending to be something you're not. It's the result of deciding that your presence matters, that your time matters, that your energy is valuable, and then moving through the world in a way that reflects that truth. It's about understanding that people are watching the way you treat you. If you respect yourself, they follow. If you prioritize yourself, they adapt. If you speak like someone whose words carry weight, they listen, not because they chose to, because human psychology is wired to respond to certainty, confidence, and self-respect. When you raise your perceived value, everything changes. Conversations shift, opportunities multiply, negotiations tilt in your favor. Not because you begged for it, but because you silently demanded it through how you showed up. People feel the difference between someone who's desperate to be chosen and someone who understands they are the choice. That energy cannot be faked. It's something you become. Mastering perceived value means elevating your standards in every area of life. It means walking away from anything, any environment, any person, any dynamic that fails to recognize your worth. Not with anger, not with drama, with indifference, with calm, with the quiet understanding that your value is not a debate, not up for negotiation, not something that fluctuates based on someone else's inability to see it. The truth is, people only treat you how you've subconsciously told them to. Teach them to respect you by first respecting yourself so fully, so unapologetically, that they have no choice but to follow your lead. Raise your perceived value, and the world will rise to meet it every time. Controlled mystery. Why less is always more. Nothing commands attention quite like the unknown. In a world where everyone overshares, overexplains, and broadcasts their every thought, the person who holds something back becomes magnetic. Mystery triggers curiosity on a primal level. The human mind hates open loops. It obsesses over unanswered questions. It fixates on what it doesn't fully understand. And this is precisely why less is always more. The less people know, the more they project, the more they imagine. And what they imagine is almost always more powerful than whatever the plain truth could ever be. Most people make the mistake of thinking that being understood equals being respected. That if they just explain themselves enough, overshare enough, and reveal every detail of their plans, people will finally see their worth. But it never works like that. The more accessible you become, the more ordinary you appear. The more predictable you are, the easier it is for people to mentally categorize you, label you, and ultimately stop thinking about you altogether. Predictability kills intrigue. Familiarity dulls significance. When people think they've figured you out, they stop paying attention. Controlled mystery is not about being secretive for the sake of it. It's about understanding the power of selective revelation. It's the ability to say less, show less, and reveal less while still moving powerfully and intentionally. The person who doesn't constantly narrate their next move, who doesn't feel the need to post every step, explain every decision, or broadcast their thoughts, becomes someone others can't quite figure out. And that inability to decode you is what creates fascination. Mystery forces people to lean in. It makes them second guess. They start wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you know that they don't. Silence becomes a power play. Being less available, less predictable, less explainable forces others to engage with you on your terms, not theirs. When you don't constantly announce your next step, people are left guessing. And in that guessing, they place you higher. Their curiosity turns to respect. Their uncertainty becomes gravity. When you embrace unpredictability, you become harder to manipulate, harder to control, harder to dismiss. People can't play games with someone whose playbook they don't have access to. You no longer operate within the obvious. You become the variable others have to adjust for. The moment people stop being able to predict your every move is the moment you begin to command an entirely different kind of power. The most magnetic individuals in any room are rarely the ones who speak the most. They are the ones who speak last, the ones who let others wonder, the ones who reveal only enough to keep interest alive, but never enough to become common. Mystery isn't emptiness, it's intentional restraint. It's the conscious decision to let your presence say more than your words ever could. Mastering controlled mystery is mastering the art of tension. It's the space between what is seen and what is unseen that holds the most power. In that space lives respect. In that space lives curiosity. In that space you become unforgettable. Not because you forced it, but because you refused to give them everything. Frame control. Always lead the interaction. Every interaction is a battle of frames. A frame is the invisible lens through which reality is interpreted in any social situation. It determines who holds the power, whose perspective dominates, whose version of reality gets accepted by everyone else in the room. This isn't always verbal. It's not about being loud or aggressive. It's a silent power game happening underneath the surface of every conversation, every negotiation, every exchange. Either you control the frame or someone else does. There is no in between. Most people walk into interactions without even realizing this game is happening. They show up reactive, submissive, trying to fit into whatever frame has been handed to them. They accept the tone others set. They respond to the questions, the assumptions, the energy someone else establishes, never questioning whether that frame serves them or disempowers them. This is how most people quietly lose power every single day, without even knowing they were supposed to fight for it. The one who controls the frame leads the interaction. They dictate how things are perceived, what's important and what's dismissed. They decide whether something is serious or trivial, whether tension exists or evaporates, whether the discussion is a negotiation, a test, or a simple conversation. It's not about arguing. It's not about debating. It's about presenting reality in such a confident, unwavering way that others subconsciously accept it as fact. Frame control starts with presence. When you walk into a room, grounded, centered, and unmoved, people feel it. They sense that you are not here to adapt to anyone else's reality. You are here to project your own. Your energy alone begins to set the rules. The way you stand, the way you speak, the calmness of your tone, the deliberate nature of your movements. These become the foundation of your frame. Others look at that stability, that certainty, and their nervous systems start calibrating to it. This is primal. People crave certainty. And when they feel yours, they follow it, often without even realizing why. Control the frame by refusing to react. The minute you jump to defend yourself, to explain excessively, or to match someone else's emotional chaos, you have accepted their frame. You've agreed, even subconsciously, that they are leading the dance and you are following. But when you hold still, when you let their energy bounce off you like static, you silently assert that your frame is stronger. You don't engage on terms that don't serve you. Mastering the frame means mastering the subtle art of redirection. If someone enters an interaction with tension, you decide whether tension exists. If someone tries to assert dominance with aggression, you decide whether that aggression is even relevant. Your ability to stay detached and grounded gives you the leverage to either amplify, diffuse, or completely ignore whatever energy is being thrown your way. You set the tone. You decide the tempo. People don't follow the loudest person. They follow the one who believes most deeply in their own reality. The one whose energy says, this is how things are. You can accept it or be irrelevant to it. This isn't arrogance. This is leadership. Every powerful figure you've ever admired mastered this instinctively or deliberately. They didn't walk into rooms asking, how do I fit in here? They walked in deciding, this is how it's going to be. That mindset, that energy, bends conversations, negotiations, and even entire rooms around them. Frame control is about psychological gravity. Your presence becomes the center point around which everything else orbits. You're no longer reacting. You're no longer chasing validation or explaining your existence. You are leading, not with force, but with presence, certainty, and the unwavering refusal to accept any reality that doesn't serve your purpose. Either you control the frame or you get controlled by it. In every interaction, that's the only game being played. The emotional invalidation technique power often isn't lost in dramatic moments. It's lost in subtle, almost invisible ways. The slight defensiveness when someone throws an insult, the nervous laugh when someone delivers a passive-aggressive jab, the instinctive flinch when you sense disapproval. These reactions are minor on the surface, but catastrophic beneath, because every time you emotionally engage with an attempt to destabilize you, whether it's criticism, sarcasm, or manipulation, you silently hand over power. You validate their frame. You accept their invitation into a game you were never supposed to play. The world is full of people who consciously or unconsciously test your emotional stability. Some do it to assert dominance. Others do it out of insecurity, throwing shade to make themselves feel taller. And then there are those who thrive on chaos, whose entire sense of significance is built on dragging others into reactive states. The second you take the bait, whether by defending yourself, explaining yourself, or emotionally reacting, you signal that their words have power over you. You accept the frame they've set, that you are on trial, and that your worth or correctness is something to be debated. The emotional invalidation technique is the silent refusal to play that game. It's the deliberate choice to not emotionally register their attempt to pull you off balance. When someone delivers an insult, a snide comment, or an underhanded critique, the most powerful response isn't to fight back or explain, it's to treat it like static, irrelevant, beneath recognition. Your lack of reaction becomes the loudest statement in the room. You communicate without words that their attempt didn't land, didn't register, didn't even qualify as worthy of acknowledgement. This isn't passive silence, it's active dominance. It's not avoidance, it's a demonstration that their words hold zero leverage over your internal state. Where most would scramble to defend themselves or lash out to restore balance, you remain utterly unshaken. The person expecting to control your emotions is left standing there with nothing. Their weapon, words designed to trigger, is rendered useless, powerless, meaningless. Silence, a neutral gaze, a slight smirk, or calmly changing the subject without addressing the comment at all, dismantles the entire dynamic. It exposes their attempt for what it really is: weakness disguised as provocation. You show the entire room without saying it that you don't bleed for things that don't matter. You do not fight battles beneath your level. You do not wrestle in the mud with those desperate to pull you down. Manipulation only works when it meets reactivity. Insults only sting when they find a target willing to receive them. Criticism only destabilizes when it finds someone who secretly questions themselves. When you remove the possibility of reaction, when you operate from a state where your value, your identity, and your peace are untouchable, you dismantle the entire foundation that manipulators, critics, and provocateurs stand on. This is more than defense. It's a form of offense disguised as stillness. Because the moment someone realizes they cannot emotionally move you, they are forced to confront their own irrelevance in your world. And that realization, whether they admit it or not, forces a recalibration of how they interact with you going forward. They either step up with respect or they step away entirely. Either way, you win. Mastering the emotional invalidation technique isn't about never feeling. It's about never handing those feelings over to anyone who hasn't earned the right to hold them. You remain composed, not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you've outgrown the childish games that so many rely on to feel powerful. Their chaos is not yours. Their insecurity is not yours. Their weakness does not deserve your reaction. The most powerful presence in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one who feels no need to validate anything designed to destabilize them. In that refusal, you become untouchable. Speak in commands, not suggestions. Language is not just communication. It's control. It's the invisible mechanism by which power is transferred, respect is established, and influence is secured. Most people move through the world speaking in suggestions, soft, hesitant, permission-seeking language that signals, "I hope this is okay. I hope you agree. I hope I'm allowed." They lace their sentences with unnecessary politeness, hedging words and disclaimers in a subconscious effort to avoid friction or disapproval. And every time they do, they unconsciously broadcast weakness. They show the world that they don't believe in their own authority. Leaders do not speak this way. They do not dilute their language with question marks where periods belong. They do not make their words small in an attempt to seem harmless, agreeable, or palatable. Instead, they speak in commands, not in the sense of barking orders or exerting force, but in a calm, grounded tone that assumes alignment rather than requests it. Their speech patterns don't ask for permission. They assume the outcome. The psychological difference between a command and a suggestion is enormous. A suggestion subconsciously signals, "I am not fully sure this is the right move." It opens the door for debate, delay, or dismissal. Commands, on the other hand, radiate certainty. They communicate, "This is what happens next." They leave no space for hesitation, no crack for resistance to slip through. This doesn't mean being rude, aggressive, or domineering. It means understanding that the way you shape your words shapes how people respond to you. When you say, "Maybe we could try this," you leave the door open for uncertainty. When you say, "We're doing this," you close that door completely. The subtle shift in tone flips the power dynamic. People respond differently to certainty because certainty feels safe. The human brain craves leadership, structure, and clarity. When you communicate like someone who knows exactly where things are headed, others fall in line, not because they're being forced to, but because the clarity feels stabilizing in a world full of ambiguity. Leaders naturally speak in commands because they have internalized one truth. People don't follow suggestions. They follow decisions. This doesn't require loudness, aggression, or pressure. It requires a complete absence of doubt in your tone, your delivery, and your presence. You don't say, "I think we should." You say, "We're moving forward with this." You don't ask, "Would it be okay if?" You say, "This is how we're doing it." The words themselves are simple. The impact is massive. Most people fear speaking this way because they're afraid of appearing harsh or offending someone. But the truth is, the people who respect you the most will always be the ones who see you stand firm in your clarity. The ones who demand you soften yourself, diminish yourself, or dilute your speech were never meant to lead you, follow you, or walk beside you in the first place. People remember those who lead with decisive energy. They forget those who constantly ask for permission to exist. Commands don't come from volume. They come from certainty, from the understanding that your words are an extension of your presence, and your presence carries authority because you've decided it does. You aren't waiting for someone else to crown you credible. You've crowned yourself. And that internal decision echoes in every word you speak. The world organizes itself around those who speak like they expect to be followed. Not from force, not from fear, but from the magnetic pull of someone who moves as if their words shape reality, because they do. Speak in commands and watch how quickly the room shifts, how quickly obstacles collapse, and how quickly people align. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Ruthless selectivity power is not just built by what you do, it's built by what you refuse to do. Every day, the world throws distractions at you, conversations that don't matter, people who drain your energy, tasks that lead nowhere, obligations dressed as opportunities. And most people, without realizing it, say yes far too often. They say yes to the noise, the clutter, the meaningless. They scatter their energy thin across things that don't move them forward, don't build them, and don't elevate them. Then they wonder why their progress feels slow, why their confidence feels shaky, and why their life feels like it's stuck in neutral. Ruthless selectivity is the discipline of choosing yourself above everything else. It's the refusal to participate in anything that doesn't serve your highest self, your vision, your mission. This isn't selfishness, it's survival. The reality is that your energy is finite, your time is finite, and anyone who lives like those resources are unlimited is guaranteeing one outcome: mediocrity. Because average isn't the result of failure, average is the result of dilution. Too many obligations, too many meaningless conversations, too many low-level commitments that drain you before you ever get to what actually matters. The most magnetic, powerful, untouchable people in the world are not those who hustle the hardest. They are those who conserve their energy with precision. They guard their time, their attention, and their presence like it's currency. Because it is. They are unavailable for drama, unavailable for gossip, unavailable for obligations that don't elevate them. Their selectivity becomes their leverage. Their ability to say no becomes their power move. This kind of selectivity doesn't happen by accident. It's a conscious decision to no longer dilute yourself, to no longer apologize for protecting your energy. It's choosing to be deeply intentional about where you show up, who gets access to you, and what conversations you allow into your mental space. Every yes is an exchange. Every commitment is an investment. The question is always the same. Is the return worth it? Does this elevate me? Does this sharpen me? Does this move me closer to the life I am building? If the answer is anything but yes, the decision is no, without guilt, without explanation. When you start living like this, people will notice. Some will call it selfish. Some will label it arrogant. Let them. Their discomfort is simply the byproduct of watching someone enforce boundaries they've never had the courage to set themselves. Meanwhile, the right people, the focused, the disciplined, the powerful, will recognize it instantly. They'll respect it. They'll mirror it, because the world silently respects those who are unavailable for nonsense. Ruthless selectivity is how you become the person whose time holds weight, the person whose presence isn't taken for granted. You stop being the one always showing up for everyone else's priorities and start being the one who shows up only for what aligns with your purpose. And in doing so, you become rare. You become valuable. because in a world full of people who say yes to everything, the one who chooses wisely becomes the one who holds all the leverage. The world bends to those who are disciplined with their energy, to those who move like their time is sacred, to those who understand that saying no isn't rejection, it's refinement, a filtering process that leaves only what's pure, what's powerful, what's essential. Ruthless selectivity isn't just a strategy, it's a lifestyle, a declaration to yourself and to the world that you are no longer available for anything less than extraordinary. And when you live that way, everything, absolutely everything, starts to shift in your favor. Move like a winner before you are one. The world doesn't respond to who you are, it responds to who you believe you are. Reality does not lead perception, perception leads reality. This is one of the most brutally overlooked truths about success, power, influence, and presence. People wait. They wait for validation, for results, for permission, for some external sign that says you've made it, now you can carry yourself like a winner. But that's not how the world works. The world does not reward those who wait for confirmation. It rewards those who decide. Everything starts with how you see yourself. Self-perception is the foundation of your reality. How you move, how you speak, how you interact with people. Every action is downstream from the story you've told yourself about who you are. If that story is weak, hesitant, filled with doubt and insecurity, the world mirrors that story right back to you. People sense it. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel it in the micro expressions you can't hide. The hesitation in your voice, the subtle shifts in your body language. The energy of someone still waiting to be chosen is unmistakable, and it guarantees that no one chooses you. The winners are not waiting to win before they act like it. They move like winners long before the trophies ever show up. Not because they're delusional, not because they're pretending, but because they understand that the identity must come before the outcome. They become the thing first. They align their thoughts, their habits, their posture, their tone, their presence with the version of themselves that already has it. And the strangest thing happens. Reality eventually conforms. When you move like someone who knows they belong at the top, the world adjusts. People treat you differently. Doors open faster. Opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere. Not because of luck, not because the world suddenly woke up and noticed you, but because you sent a new signal, a frequency shift. Your energy broadcasted something entirely different. I am the one. And whether people realize it consciously or not, they begin to respond in kind. Watch the body language of winners, those who command rooms, those who walk through life with gravity. Their movements are deliberate. They aren't rushed. They aren't fidgeting. They don't nervously over-explain. They're composed, rooted. They speak as if their words carry weight, because in their mind they absolutely do. That belief leaks into every interaction. Their eyes hold steady. Their voice doesn't rise at the end of sentences looking for approval. Their presence does the heavy lifting. This isn't arrogance. It's not about puffing yourself up or performing confidence. It's about alignment. Acting like a winner before you are one is not fakery. It's about refusing to be out of sync with the version of yourself that you are building. It's about realizing that there is no external moment, no magic day when the world hands you permission. The permission is internal. It always has been. Most people live in reverse. They wait for proof before adopting belief. They say, once I'm successful, then I'll walk taller, speak clearer, show up with more confidence. But the world doesn't work like that. The equation is backwards. You don't get to walk tall because you succeeded. You succeed because you walked tall first. The world doesn't validate you until you validate yourself. Look at anyone who has done anything extraordinary. Long before the results, long before the external world caught up, they were already operating as if it was done. They carried themselves with the certainty that it wasn't a matter of if, but when. And that energy is magnetic. People trust those who trust themselves. Investors invest in those who look like they don't need the investment. Audiences listen to those who speak like their words already matter. The job offer, the deal, the opportunity, they all flow to the person who seems like the natural fit. And who is the natural fit? The one who acts like they already belong there. This is the truth about life that most people never grasp. Reality is incredibly slow compared to belief. The shift always happens internally first. Long before the world knows your name, you must know it. Long before the world decides you're worthy, you must move like someone who's already decided that for yourself. And that's not delusion, that's leadership, that's mastery. Moving like a winner means carrying a different kind of presence into every room you step into. It means refusing to explain your worth, refusing to beg for opportunities, refusing to dilute your voice, your energy, your essence to fit into places you were meant to lead. The person who moves like a winner doesn't rush to fill silences. They aren't desperate to be liked. They understand that scarcity creates value, that the less you need to be seen, the more seen you become. Everything about how you carry yourself signals something. People are always scanning. Is this person someone who leads, someone who commands respect, or is this someone waiting to be told what they're allowed to have, who they're allowed to be? The split-second decision people make about you is based not on your resume, not on your credentials, but on how you show up. It's in your gaze, your stillness, your posture, your tone. Moving like a winner before you are one means moving with discipline when no one is watching. It means operating at a standard long before the rewards show up. It's easy to be confident when the results are undeniable. But the people who move the world are the ones whose confidence showed up long before the evidence ever did. The ones who decided that whether anyone applauds, approves, or notices, it doesn't change how they operate. They are already it. Already chosen, already inevitable. This is the secret that bends reality. The world cannot help but match the energy you project. When you show up as the version of yourself that has already made it, the world will look for ways to confirm that story. It will hand you proof that aligns with the frequency you've chosen. But the process only works in that order. The belief comes first, the movement comes first, the reality catches up after. Winners win because they refuse to move like anything less. They don't wait, they don't beg, they don't hesitate, they decide. And that decision shifts the way they speak, the way they walk, the way they navigate the world. Everything else is simply the world learning what they already knew. The art of strategic absence. Presence has power, but absence, when used with intention, is a weapon that commands respect in a way presence never can. Most people are addicted to being seen. They believe that the more visible they are, the more valued they'll become. So they show up constantly, they overexpose themselves, and in doing so, they dilute their presence until it becomes background noise, familiar, predictable, easy to overlook. But what they never realize is that presence creates desire only when it is paired with absence. What is always available loses its value. What is scarce becomes priceless. When you are constantly accessible, always responding, always showing up, always available, people begin to subconsciously take you for granted. It's not because they are cruel or careless. It's because human psychology is wired this way. Familiarity breeds comfort, but comfort breeds indifference. Anything that becomes too common loses its edge. It loses its mystery, its gravity, and eventually it loses its power. A person who understands the art of strategic absence lives by a different rule book. They recognize that their presence is currency, and like any currency, inflation kills value. Overexposure cheapens power. So they move differently. They don't rush to every invitation. They don't feel the need to attend every gathering, answer every message, or engage in every conversation. They are present where it matters, and then they withdraw. Not out of neglect, not out of arrogance, but out of precision. Absence creates space for intrigue to grow. It forces people to wonder, to imagine, to fill in the gaps with their own curiosity. And that curiosity always elevates your perceived value far more than any explanation ever could. When you step back intentionally, the silence of your absence begins to echo louder than your words ever did. People start asking questions they didn't ask when you were always around. Where are they? What are they doing? Why aren't they here? The moment you are no longer instantly accessible is the moment people begin to realize how much your presence actually meant. This doesn't mean disappearing entirely. Disappearance is neglect. Strategic absence is art. It's the deliberate rhythm of presence and withdrawal. It's knowing when your presence amplifies the room and when your absence amplifies you. It's the discipline to resist the ego's craving for constant validation and instead trust that space creates scarcity and scarcity creates value. When you withdraw, people are forced to engage with the void you leave behind. They feel it. They may not say it, but it's there. That subtle tension, that vacuum. And in that vacuum, your influence grows. Not through effort, not through words, but through the sheer power of being missed. The person who doesn't always show up when expected becomes someone whose presence is never taken lightly. You become the outlier in a world flooded with overexposure and constant availability. Strategic absence also creates boundaries without the need to explain them. You no longer have to justify why you're unavailable. Your scarcity becomes self-explanatory. The person who is always busy, always grinding, always selective about where their energy goes, never needs to explain why they aren't easily reached. Their life speaks for itself, and that unspoken boundary commands more respect than any verbal demand ever could. The people who master this understand that silence often speaks louder than presence. Watch those at the top of any industry. The most respected figures rarely flood the world with their presence. They are calculated. You don't hear from them constantly, and when you do, it matters. Their words hit differently because they are not part of the everyday noise. Their absence becomes the frame that amplifies their presence. There is also power in not being emotionally available all the time. Emotional accessibility, like physical availability, when overgiven, leads to a subtle but undeniable decrease in respect. When people know they can dump their problems on you anytime, drain your energy, or always rely on your emotional labor without limits, they stop valuing that access. But when you make it clear, without ever having to say it, that your energy is a privilege, not a right, people adjust how they approach you. This doesn't mean being cold, it means being intentional. You decide when you engage, you decide when you disconnect. You become the architect of your availability. And because of that, you never appear desperate for attention, validation, or approval. You are not the person constantly proving, performing, or showing up just to be seen. You are the person whose presence is a statement because it's not handed out cheaply. It applies to relationships too. Absence sharpens appreciation. Too much presence breeds complacency. You've seen it happen. People who are always there are eventually assumed. But the one who knows how to step away, to let the silence speak, to let their absence create a subtle tension, that person is remembered differently, valued differently, respected differently. This strategy isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing childish games. It's about understanding that your time, your energy, your presence are finite resources, and how you manage them teaches the world how to treat you. If you hand them out freely to anyone, anytime, you send a message that they are abundant, easily acquired, and therefore easily dismissed. But when you become selective, when you strategically withdraw, when you allow space between your appearances, you send an entirely different signal. My presence is a privilege, and the world listens. There's an elegance to it, an untouchable quality. You stop participating in the desperate scramble for attention that most people unknowingly engage in. You stop needing to constantly remind people of your value because your absence does it for you. You become the person others are aware of even when you're not in the room. The gravity of your name holds weight precisely because you're not always available to be seen, to be heard, to be accessed. People will always chase what they can't easily have. This is a law of human behavior that has never failed and never will. When you're everywhere, you become common. When you're selective, you become significant. And that significance doesn't require noise. It doesn't require announcements. It doesn't require explanations. It lives in the subtle, undeniable power of being missed. So you must learn the discipline of walking away, not out of weakness, but out of strength. The strength to understand that constant presence is not power, strategic presence is. The strength to understand that showing up everywhere is not influence. Being remembered after you've left the room is. The strength to know that the loudest person is rarely the most respected. It is the person who knows when to speak and when to fall silent, when to appear and when to disappear, when to engage and when to let the world wonder. Mastering the art of strategic absence is mastering the ability to be felt even when unseen, to be heard even when silent, to be remembered even when forgotten by others for a moment. It's becoming the person whose presence is so carefully rationed that when you do show up, it shifts the energy of the room instantly. And that is a level of power that words could never buy. That is the kind of power that presence alone could never achieve. Only absence can create it. You become what you tolerate. Life is not determined by what you desire, what you hope for, or what you dream about. Life is determined by what you are willing to tolerate. Every time you accept less than you deserve, whether it's in the form of disrespect, mediocrity, broken promises, disorganization, laziness, or chaos, you send a silent signal to the world and to yourself. This is acceptable. This is what I allow. And the brutal reality is that what you allow does not stay neutral. It multiplies, it compounds, it grows. Your entire reality is nothing more than a reflection of your standards. Look around at your environment, your relationships, your finances, your health, your level of inner peace. Every piece of it is a direct mirror of what you have deemed acceptable. Not consciously, nobody willingly chooses pain, stress, or failure, but unconsciously, through the little things you've allowed to slide, the skipped boundaries, the moments you didn't speak up, the times you ignored the nagging voice inside telling you, this isn't okay. This is the silent, invisible contract that most people sign with the world without even realizing it. I am okay with this. Whether it's being treated poorly, underpaid, overlooked, disrespected, or stuck in a loop of underperformance, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens through 1,000 micro-decisions to tolerate what should have been confronted, changed, or walked away from. And the world doesn't argue with you. It doesn't fight back. It simply reflects the standards you enforce, or the ones you don't. The most dangerous lie people tell themselves is, it's not that bad. This quiet justification becomes the breeding ground for a life that feels suffocating. Mediocrity never arrives loudly. It creeps in like a fog, soft, subtle, patient. You ignore the small disrespect, you justify the missed workout, you excuse the late payment, you overlook the lack of follow-through, and before you realize it, you're drowning in an ocean built from your own neglected boundaries. But the inverse is also true. The moment you decide to raise your standards, to no longer tolerate what drains, disrespects, or diminishes you, the world responds. It has no choice. Because your standards are not just for you, they are the rules you hand to the world about how it must treat you. They are the terms and conditions of your life. You either enforce them, or you become enslaved by the absence of them. This is where people misunderstand power. They believe power is loud, that it comes from confrontation, aggression, or dominance. It doesn't. True power is quiet. It's in the invisible lines you draw that say, this is as low as I go. Anything beneath this does not exist in my world. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to argue about it. You simply become unavailable for nonsense. And when you move like someone who is unavailable for nonsense, nonsense stops showing up. Life organizes itself around the standards you hold. Relationships shift. People either rise to meet your level or they disappear. Opportunities recalibrate. The distractions that once seemed impossible to shake suddenly lose their grip. You become a different frequency, and frequencies attract reflections of themselves. The people who build extraordinary lives are not lucky. They are ruthless about what they tolerate. They do not entertain disorder, inconsistency, or disrespect, not from others, and certainly not from themselves. Their floors become other people's ceilings. What most consider good enough becomes utterly unacceptable to them. And the world notices, because the world always notices someone who holds the line with discipline, clarity, and quiet certainty. You become what you tolerate, not just externally, but internally. The standards you hold for your external world mirror the standards you hold for yourself. If you tolerate laziness in others, it means you've likely tolerated it in yourself. If you tolerate broken commitments from those around you, there's a good chance you've let your own commitments slide too. Your relationship with yourself is always the first contract. If that contract is weak, every other one will be too. Raising your standards is not about perfection. It's about precision. It's about deciding what is non-negotiable, what is sacred, what is utterly untouchable. It means understanding that your energy is a finite resource, and every time you allow something beneath your standard to remain in your life, it siphons from the reserves that should be going toward your mission, your peace, your growth. This shift is not always pretty. When you stop tolerating what you once accepted, friction follows. People will resist. They've grown comfortable with the version of you who made space for their dysfunction, their inconsistency, their inability to meet your needs. And when you change the rules, without warning, without apology, it disrupts their reality. Some will get angry. Some will guilt you. Some will disappear. Let them. Their exit is the confirmation that your new standard is working exactly as it should. Every upgrade in life comes with an audit. The people, habits, mindsets, and environments that align with the old version of you cannot always cross into the new one. That is the price of evolution, and if you're unwilling to pay it, you stay exactly where you are, stuck in the loop of tolerating things that drain you, minimize you, or slowly erode your potential. But the moment you decide, truly decide, that you will no longer make space for what insults your soul, your life recalibrates fast. Because the universe, for all its mystery, operates on a simple truth. It mirrors your standards. When you draw the line, the world respects it. When you hold the line, the world bends to it. This is not just about removing bad things. It's about making space for great things. When you stop tolerating mediocrity, excellence has room to enter. When you stop entertaining distractions, focus becomes effortless. When you stop accepting crumbs, you make space for feasts. But none of it happens until you become ruthless about what is no longer allowed in your life. The world bends for those who refuse to bend for nonsense. And the beautiful part is that the shift is instant. It doesn't take years to change your standards. It takes a decision. One moment where you draw the line, burn the old contract, and write a new one with yourself. A contract that says, from this day forward, this is who I am. This is what I allow. This is what I refuse. And anything beneath this standard is no longer part of my reality. People will notice the difference. The ones who matter will respect it. The ones who don't will leave. Let them. Because the cost of keeping them is your own growth, your own peace, your own potential. And that's a price far too high for anyone who's serious about building a life that actually feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. You become what you tolerate. Your standards are the architects of your future. The sooner you stop tolerating what drains you, the sooner you start building a life that energizes you, elevates you, and reflects the highest version of who you are. This is the law. It has never failed, and it never will. Invisible power, the law of non-reaction power, is rarely loud. It's not the person shouting the most, interrupting the conversation, or forcing their opinion onto everyone else. The most commanding form of power is invisible, subtle, almost silent. It lives in presence, it lives in stillness, and it lives most profoundly in the ability to remain completely unmoved in a world addicted to reaction. The person who masters non-reaction becomes untouchable, because when you no longer give others the ability to move you emotionally, they lose control over you completely. You become the one who decides. You become the one who dictates the energy, the tone, and the outcome. Most people are entirely reactive without even knowing it. They live at the mercy of external triggers, allowing every comment, glance, setback, and provocation to pull their emotions in every direction. A snide remark ruins their day. A perceived slight hijacks their focus. A minor inconvenience sends them spiraling. Their entire existence becomes a puppet show, with invisible strings tied to everything and everyone around them. And the worst part is, they've normalized it. They believe this is how life is supposed to be, that reacting is inevitable, that emotional turbulence is just part of the deal, but it isn't. There is another way to move through the world, a way that feels like stepping out of the chaos while everyone else drowns in it. Non-reaction is not passivity. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's discipline. It's the conscious decision to hold your power so tightly that you refuse to hand it over to anyone else. Not critics, not manipulators, not life's random inconveniences. When you master non-reaction, something incredible happens. People stop knowing how to control you. They lose their grip. The tactics that work on everyone else, the passive-aggressive digs, the guilt trips, the provocations, fall flat. They bounce off you like static. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifts completely. You are no longer someone reacting to the world. The world is now reacting to you. Imagine the person who tries to insult you, expecting the usual cycle of defensiveness or retaliation. But you don't flinch. You don't engage. You don't even dignify it with acknowledgement. Instantly, the script breaks. Their weapon, words designed to trigger, is rendered useless. The silence becomes deafening. The lack of reaction becomes louder than any response ever could. And in that silence, their power evaporates. You remain still, composed, untouchable. This applies to more than just conflict. It applies to pressure, stress, urgency, manipulation, every tool the world uses to pull you out of your center. When someone demands a rushed decision, you remain calm. When a situation escalates in tension, you do not escalate with it. You become the anchor while everyone else flails in the storm. Your refusal to react signals something profound. I am the one who decides how I feel. Not you, not this, not anything outside of me. The discipline of non-reaction doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means mastering the gap between stimulus and response. It means recognizing that just because something happens doesn't mean it deserves your energy. You evaluate, you observe, and then you choose. Do I engage? Do I ignore? Do I act? Or do I let it pass? The key is that it becomes your choice, not an automatic, conditioned response triggered by someone else's behavior. The world is full of people who rely on your reactions to feel powerful. The manipulator needs you to get upset so they can play the victim. The critic needs you to defend yourself so they can feel superior. The attention seeker needs you to engage so they can drain your energy. When you remove the possibility of reaction, you remove their fuel. They're left staring at someone they cannot move, cannot shake, cannot control. And that is a deeply unsettling experience for them, but an incredibly empowering one for you. Non-reaction becomes a kind of psychological warfare, but one where you never have to lift a finger. You simply exist in a state of internal command that forces everyone else to recalibrate. People start speaking more carefully around you. They choose their words with more precision. They think twice before bringing chaos to your doorstep because they know it won't land. They know you are no longer participating in the unconscious dance of emotional reactivity. Mastering this is mastering yourself. It requires deep inner work, the kind most people will never do. It demands that you become intimately aware of your own triggers, your own patterns, your own weaknesses. You begin to see where you've been handing your power away, over and over again without realizing it. And then you stop. You reclaim it. You begin the process of becoming the one who commands yourself so completely that nothing external can disrupt your inner world. This is the real power that people feel but cannot describe. They may call it presence, they may call it composure, but what they are actually sensing is your refusal to be moved by anything unworthy of your energy. It's the invisible shield that comes from knowing yourself so thoroughly that nothing outside of you determines what happens inside of you. The most influential people in the world all have this in common. They are not easily rattled. They do not react to every provocation. They move slowly, speak deliberately, and hold silence as if it were a weapon. And it is, because when you master silence, when you master non-reaction, you force the world to reveal itself. The impulsive talkers, the manipulators, the insecure, they all expose themselves in the empty space you create by not reacting. While they scramble to fill the void with noise, you sit still, watching, evaluating, deciding. This is how you control others, by controlling yourself, not through force, not through aggression, but through the quiet, undeniable presence of someone who cannot be emotionally hijacked, someone who cannot be dragged into chaos, someone who cannot be baited into playing games that do not serve them. And the paradox is that while you appear to be doing nothing, you're actually doing everything. You're asserting dominance without aggression. You're commanding respect without asking for it. You're shifting power dynamics without lifting a finger. You become the immovable object in a world full of people addicted to being the unstoppable force. And when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, the object always wins. Mastering the law of non-reaction doesn't just change how people treat you, it changes how life treats you. Problems no longer feel like emergencies. Challenges lose their sting. You stop feeling like you're constantly fighting fires and start realizing that most fires were illusions designed to make you flinch, designed to make you hand over your focus, your energy, your power, but not anymore. Not once you've stepped into this level of control. Non-reaction becomes your default, not because you're numb, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand the truth. Anything that can pull you out of your center owns you, and you do not belong to anything outside of yourself. In a world that thrives on chaos, the person who remains still becomes the one everyone notices, the one everyone respects, the one no one can shake. This is invisible power. This is the law of non-reaction, and once you master it, you never go back. The world bends not for those who chase approval, react to noise, or shrink themselves, but for those who lead with presence, certainty, and discipline. Power isn't granted, it's claimed. The moment you decide to master yourself, to walk like you belong, speak like it's law, and withdraw like your absence is power, you stop adapting to the world and force the world to adapt to you. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. Move like this and everything changes.